So welcome to the Hub for Show, where you can get ideas to help you grow your eco-conscious business. And today I'm joined by Julie Winnard of Haynard Ltd, and we're talking about resilience versus sustainability for business. So welcome, Julie. Great to have you on the show.
Hi there.
So just a bit more about Julie. She's a sustainability consultant focusing on transport, carbon, and whole system resilient changes to help businesses become more sustainable. She's also a textile artist who upcycles as part of becoming more sustainable. So we'll launch straight into the questions because this is a 10-minute show, so we do really pack it in. So first question, you specialize in resilience versus sustainability, which kind of to me is the same thing. Can you tell us a bit more about this?
You're absolutely right. They are very much the same thing, but they come from different schools of thought. So resilience is quite an old topic. So business resilience is your ability to continue when there's a shock or a problem. And sustainability is the ability to operate and flourish long term in a more wide sense. So if you're looking at business resilience, you actually need to take account of sustainability, because otherwise you could be very resilient at doing something a bit bad, like selling tobacco or oil, that eventually society or nature decide, you get blowback from that and it puts your business out of business. On the flip side, if you do sustainability well, you need to think about resilience, particularly of your strategic decisions. Otherwise, you can come up with a great strategy and then it goes really wrong. And that can have very bad unintended consequences because something has changed that you didn't anticipate or didn't think about. Or it could result in things like you being accused of greenwashing because people say, oh, well, that went wrong and you always knew it would. So it can have quite bad reputational effects and it can put you out of business one way or another. So they're actually, to do either, you really have to do both. And I tend to call it now resilient sustainability. Okay. And they're quite nice ways of translating each other. So if I'm talking to a business that's not into sustainability, resilience is a way of getting them to think about it, because there's lots of research now that shows that it really helps your company because you are managing extra risks that otherwise you wouldn't necessarily think about. And you're also finding extra opportunities that you wouldn't necessarily spot if you just thought in a very mainstream way.
Brilliant, yes. And I think as well, I mean, it's been shown that a lot of them are a lot more profitable now as well, that are employing these sustainability and resilience into their business. So what are some of the ways that you work with business owners?
It varies from people sort of saying, my customers asked me to do something to do with sustainability and I don't even really know what the word means. So it might be, kind of having a meeting with them to give them a bit of education about, figuring out what their customer wants. It can be like a workshop around a specific problem, particularly around something to do with strategy. And that could be, we want to do this product, how do we make it more sustainable? Or it could be, we've got this product, we want to launch it. What's the most resilient way of doing that when the market's all in turmoil, which now obviously people are much more used to that idea after the last couple of years we've had. Mm-hmm. And it can also be, because my background is as an automotive engineer originally, it can be looking at your vehicle fleet energy or fuel use data, and maybe looking at how you adopt electric vehicles, how you have things like a travel plan or a transport hierarchy to reduce your footprint. So, and it can be more general stuff as well. So I quite like a bit of an interesting challenge. So for example, I've been working with the rail industry locally, who had some old energy data tools that they didn't really know how to use. And I had to go through those and work out how they operate and work out how they should do it in the future, basically, so that they can look at their own data and work out where there are problems or not. So all sorts of different things, and also things like reporting. There's a lot of reporting around, and that's often a case of not only writing the report with or for the customer, but also trying to make sure they've done something, so they've got something to write about the good things they're doing.
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, I think that's we were talking earlier, and you said that's often one of the hardest parts, isn't it? Is sort of looking at that data and kind of figuring out what it means and how do you report that and how do you improve that. So, are there some tips or a simple strategy that you can share with our listeners who are just starting out in their sustainability journey? I mean, they tend to be quite small businesses for the most part.
Well, the main tip is that we're now in a place with sustainability, particularly with climate change, where we need everybody at all levels to act, and everybody at all levels can act. That's the good news. There is always something that you can do, even quite a small company. So don't worry about the fact that you're not, Unilever or Ford or someone like that. Actually, all those little people add up too. And in this country, we have a lot of SMEs. So there are some really good bits of free advice online that you can go and look at the Energy Saving Trust. They have advice for businesses and households. The other one is, start collecting your utility data and your the things that you buy, particularly office supplies, and your waste, because that is where a lot of your footprint is. If you're a manufacturer, there'll be other more complicated things to do with your suppliers and where you send stuff off to, but that comes later. The basis is just get in the discipline of collecting stuff. And then if it's something a little bit more complicated, then obviously go and ask somebody reputable. Don't just read stuff that's in the press. Which takes me to my final one. Be quite careful about the mainstream press. Even papers like The Guardian get stuff wrong. So going to look at people like the Carbon Trust or the government website for advice more than policy is, people have their own opinions about what should be done. But in terms of what's available and facts, the government and the Office of National Statistics are pretty good. So there's a lot of different places like that, the Carbon Trust and the Energy Saving Trust, that have got some good advice.
Fantastic.
And travel less. Sorry, I forgot my big one. Don't get on an aeroplane if you really don't have to. That's actually a lot of carbon for one action. So that's a really nice place to start reducing your footprint. And obviously at the moment that is really easy because we can't go anywhere. So that's
definitely. And there's other alternative ways of doing it if you can. So if you can do it by the train or something like that, then do it. And I know a business that I work with, they offer climate perks to employees to actually take a longer holiday so they can do it more sustainably. So yeah, I totally agree with you. If it's a long holiday, make the most of it when you're out there, make it longer, do as much as you can.
I used to do that with my first employer. It's a really good way of combining 2 or 3 things together.
Yeah, exactly. I think city breaks are a no-no. So can you give us your top eco tip?
My top eco tip is a slightly theoretical one. It's called do the maths. So you have to look at the data for sustainability, because sometimes the answer is a bit counterintuitive. And also there's a lot of quite bad information out there. There are some bad actors who are intent on, trying to botch climate change because it's inconvenient for their business model. So there are some simple things you can do. There's some basic stuff everyone can learn. It's like safety or quality. It's the next revolution in how everybody operates. It's going to get embedded in everything. There is a great book you can read, which is about 10 years old now, called How Bad Are Bananas? And it's by Mike Berners-Lee, who's the son of Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the internet. And it goes through everything from very small stuff to very big stuff. And he wrote it because CEOs were angsting about how they dried their hands, but then getting on aeroplanes, and how you dry your hands. The difference between different methods is really small, whereas getting on an aeroplane versus a train, that's a really big deal, or not getting on a plane at all, not going on a trip at all. So that gives you a feel, although the figures are now a little bit out of date, it gives you a feel for the relative impact of different things. And then, of course, get somebody to help you look at the data. And sometimes you will be trading different types of impact. So you might have different materials that you're looking at. And really, there isn't one best one, but you have to decide what is the most important for what you're doing. Because a bit like diesel cars, you might end up trading carbon footprint for something else like air pollution. So you have to be quite careful that you don't, just move the problem around to something else. So do the maths and, get help. There's lots of people out there like me that can help, even teeny weeny businesses and people, and quite often people like me will offer you a free quick call to find out if we can help you, and if we can't, we'll try and send you to someone else who can.
Fantastic. And that's just what I was going to say. You do offer your calls, so people do need that help. And you've looked online, you've looked at all these sites that you've mentioned, and they still find it very overwhelming. And then I would suggest they can come to you and have a chat. You can find Julie linkedin.com and look at Julie Winnard, and that's Winnard. And you do workshops, you do other services as well, just practical ways that people can get started, or just help them make sense of all of it.
Yeah, I tailor what I offer. I have some typical things that I do for people, but also I will tailor it to what people need.
Fantastic. Brilliant. All right. Well, they're fantastic. Such great tips there, great insights, lots of information as we pack in always. So thank you so much, Julie, for joining us on the show. Real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and to our visitors, if you're watching the live or you're watching the replay, please keep your questions coming. Both Julie and I will keep an eye on that over the day. It will also be uploaded to YouTube, so you can check out HubFizz on YouTube. And we will see you same time next week. Goodbye for now.
Bye.